Okay, this week we are talking about empowering supply chain management within the organization, making sure that supply chain managers have a seat at the table effectively. Coming right up. So welcome back, Karen. Maybe just for those who haven't met you, you've worked in some pretty impressive companies over the years. Just give us a bit of your background.
Yeah, no, thanks. I have been at Amazon, at Walmart, at Cardinal Health, and now I am the CEO of Vanguard Medical Logistics.
Great. So there's some pretty big supply chains operating there. So
Yes.
what are your views on how well regarded supply chain management is within business? I mean, surely it must have a seat at the table in those organizations.
Oh, it absolutely does. You do not get to the size of a Walmart or
Yeah.
an Amazon without being focused first on supply chain management. I would say it's a mixed bag at other companies, particularly companies where you traditionally have seen a lot of commercial activity, where
Mm.
supply chain is an afterthought. And so you have an Apple. Apple's a great example of a company that you don't generally think of as a fantastic supply chain management company, but they are.
Mm.
And it's ingrained in the DNA. And in companies, the vast majority of companies where it's not ingrained in their DNA, how do you make sure that supply chain management is actually empowered and ingrained?
Mm.
And that is by becoming storytellers and partnering with finance. The craziest thing that I have encountered in many companies is that supply chain and finance are adversaries. They
Mm.
are enemies and they hate to be in the same meeting room together. And actually, your largest, like most impacted, biggest benefactor of proper supply chain management or telling the story is going to be your finance partners. And so, in those companies where you've been trying for decades to get supply chain management to stay at the table, not just when the Red Sea is disrupted or there's a
Mm.
pandemic or something else happens. So, not when things are going wrong, but around the time, the rest of the time is actually when your finance partners are basically like your inseparable twin, telling stories and explaining what's going on.
That's a great perspective. People often ask me, if it's, implementing a new system or process or, seeking capital within the supply
Mhm.
chain, how do we get people on board? How do we convince them? And I always say it's in the numbers, folks.
Yes.
It's got to be a very clear cost benefit. Not just that, but how might it impact service? How could it improve
Mhm.
sales? It all comes down to the numbers, and I think people in supply chain who've been in supply chain a while understand that. We're almost like
Mhm.
bean counters.
Yes. Yeah. And being able to justify and break that down and explain how costs are apportioned
Mm.
out. The best supply chain managers know how to do that in their sleep. They're the ones
Mm.
that finance comes to for answers and
Yeah.
help with telling the story. And
Mm.
so it's how do you become that and bring that to a company that doesn't have it? And
Mm.
it's by making finance your best buddy and then explaining stories because not every supply chain thing, whether it's going from a single source supplier to having a
Mm.
backup source, which is a reasonable thing,
Mm.
does not necessarily make financial sense
Mm.
three out of 5 years. In
Yeah.
the 2 years that it makes a hell of a lot of sense, that's when finance adores you. But you need to
Mm.
remind finance of that, and you need to constantly be telling
Mm.
stories because otherwise you're constantly asking for investment.
Yeah.
And without a clear line of sight to, I need $10 million and it's going to give me revenue lift of
Yeah.
1.4,
Yeah.
which is something that commercial is going to be able to say.
Mm.
Now, if they can deliver that, that's the big question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but that's where supply chain falls down with getting the investments is they haven't made finance their
Mm.
partners, and then
Mm.
they don't know how to speak in a language that everyone else will listen
Yeah.
to.
That's interesting. I mean, funnily enough, after this chat, I have a meeting with the CEO, client CEO, and we're talking about expanding their distribution network. And
Mhm.
because of their growth, they desperately need new warehousing. So,
Yeah.
they've got to invest that $5-10 million or whatever. And she's saying quite simply, we won't get the money. I need a
Yeah.
I need a ramp up program, quite rightly,
Yeah.
where
Mhm.
we have to kind of tweak what we've got and then a sales pickup. You've got to tell that story. You've got to tell
Mhm.
that developmental story, if you like, of,
Yes.
it would be really cool to spend the 10 million now, but it doesn't make commercial sense. But we'll have to
Exactly.
eventually, and here's how we gradually ramp up.
That is exactly it. And it's clear that CEO has had to try to sell that before.
Yeah, that's right. And I
Yes.
think people new to supply chain, and it's probably because we kind of have this engineering numbers sort of background. We
Mhm.
think others will just see the sense in it. Yeah,
Yes.
we need to spend
Mhm.
this $3-4 million.
Yeah.
No, tell me what I'm going to get for it.
Yeah, well, exactly. And if you're only waiting to tell the story when you're asking for money, the
Mm,
level of scrutiny is really high. But if you're
yeah,
constantly telling people, hey, 18 months from now, 24 months from now,
yeah,
to be able to exist or be able to execute on your needs, we're going to need to do this. You've got to plant those seeds ahead of
yeah,
time and continually tell the story.
yeah.
Otherwise, you've got to go and explain a novel to someone, and they're
And,
not going to be
and,
willing to read.
And of course, there's the flip side where,
Yes.
if we're good at supply chain, we're constantly looking for opportunities for improvement.
Mhm.
So we're not going
Yes,
with our hand out, we're going to give money back and say,
exactly.
to sales
Mhm,
and marketing or finance, if we can just tweak this, we'll add $2 million to the bottom line.
mhm.
Uh,
Exactly, yes. You gotta shout about the wins
mm,
and go from there.
yeah, that's great. No, some great insights as always, Karen. Thank you for joining us, and maybe we'll have to have you back again. It's,
Sounds
you have
great.
some great perspectives. Bye for now.